Everyone around you has a reaction. Someone says something cutting and they fire back. Someone delivers bad news and they fall apart. Someone picks a fight and the room ignites. And then there is you, standing in the middle of it, breathing normally, face completely still. Not because you trained yourself to be this way, not because you practiced some meditation technique or read a book about emotional regulation, but because this is simply how you arrived, how you have always been. And here is what nobody tells you about being the person who never visibly reacts. The world does not celebrate it. The world does not trust it. The world looks at your stillness and decides entirely on its own that something must be wrong with you. So you already know how this goes. Someone pushes you and you do not push back and they call you a pushover. Someone insults you and you absorb it without flinching and they call you cold. Someone expects a dramatic response and you give them a measured one and they say you do not care. You do care. You care deeply, privately, internally, in ways that would surprise almost everyone who has ever read you as indifferent. But caring quietly, it turns out, is something the world has very little patience for. And you have spent a significant portion of your life navigating the gap between who you actually are and who people decided you were the moment you failed to perform the reaction they were waiting for. That gap is real, and it costs you more than most people realize. Psychologists who study emotional expressivity have documented something called the expressivity expectation, the deeply held social assumption that emotional states should be visible, that if you feel something, it should show, that a face that does not move must contain a heart that does not feel. Research published in the journal Emotion found that people consistently rated low expressivity individuals as less empathetic, less engaged, and less trustworthy, not because of anything those individuals said or did, but simply because their face did not confirm what the observer wanted to see. In other words, you are being penalized not for your character, but for your neurology, not for what is happening inside you, but for the absence of a broadcast signal that other people have come to expect. But here is where it gets complicated, because being non-reactive is not a single thing, and the difference matters. There are people who do not react because they have suppressed their emotional responses, because somewhere early in life they learned that having feelings was dangerous, so they buried them. That is not stillness. That is pressure building beneath a sealed surface. And then there are people like you, who simply process differently, who experience emotion fully and internally and do not feel a compulsion to perform it for an audience. Neuroscientists studying emotional processing found that people with low external expressivity often show equal or higher internal physiological responses than their high expressivity counterparts. The feeling is there. The heart rate is elevated. The cognitive processing is active. The volume knob is turned all the way up on the inside. The broadcast is simply private. That is not emotional unavailability. That is a different architecture. And those are not the same diagnosis. Here is something nobody prepares you for. Being non-reactive in a reactive world means you become everyone's emotional container. Because you do not escalate, people bring their escalation to you. Because you do not panic, you become the person handed every crisis. Because you absorb without visibly breaking, people unconsciously decide your capacity for absorption is infinite. And it is not. You have a threshold the same as everyone else. Yours is just quieter when it breaks. There is no dramatic moment, no visible crack, no scene that signals to the room that you have reached your limit. You simply one day stop showing up. You withdraw cleanly and without announcement. And then the same people who never noticed you absorbing everything suddenly cannot understand where you went. There is a specific kind of loneliness that belongs to this experience, and almost no one talks about it directly. It is the loneliness of being consistently misread, of having your composure called detachment, your steadiness called disinterest, your silence called arrogance, of sitting with someone in real pain, genuinely present, genuinely moved, and watching them leave the conversation feeling like you did not care, because your caring did not look the way they needed it to look. You cannot manufacture a performance for them. It would feel dishonest, and they would probably sense the artificiality anyway. So you stay as you are, quiet, present, genuinely there. And somehow that is never quite enough. And yet, Here is the other side of this that deserves to be said plainly. Your non-reactivity, the same quality that costs you socially, is also the reason certain people in your life trust you more than anyone else. In a crisis, you are the one they call. Not because you will cry with them, but because you will not. Because you will stay level while everything around you is breaking. Because your nervous system is doing something genuinely rare, holding steady under conditions that would destabilize most people. Research on leadership under pressure consistently finds that emotional regulation under stress, the ability to remain clear and functional when the environment is chaotic, is one of the most valuable and least common human traits. You were born with the baseline setting that others spend careers trying to develop. The world will keep misreading you. People will keep projecting emotion onto your stillness that is not there, and missing the emotion that is. Someone will call you cold again. Someone will tell you to open up more, react more, be more. And you will sit with that the same way you sit with everything. Quietly, completely, without giving them the reaction they came for. That is not a flaw. That is discipline that costs you nothing because it is simply who you are. And somewhere in your life, at least one person has looked at your stillness in the middle of their storm and felt for the first time genuinely safe. That is not nothing. That is the whole thing. Leave a comment below. Tell me what people always get wrong about you. I read every single one.